From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Well, good morning again, and welcome to the Library of Congress. I'm John Cole. I'm the director of the Center for the Book in the Library of Congress. Thanks for coming to our very special Books and Beyond for Young People's program. Our Center for the Book promotes books, reading, libraries, and literacy to people of all ages nationwide. And here at the library, we have a room, well, actually 3 rooms, for those under 16 years of age. It's called the Young Readers Center, opened in 2009. The center is on the ground floor of this beautiful Jefferson building, and there, with a parent or a guardian, you can attend one of our many programs or read the latest books for young people. This morning, I want to acknowledge the Young Readers Center head, Karen Jaffe, who with her staff and volunteers have organized this wonderful program. Karen, please stand up. Let's give her a hand. This actually is an annual program for the Center for the Book and its Young Readers Center. It's called the Jonah Solkoff Eskin Memorial Program, and it has been funded for 7 years by Barney and Marcia Eskin, who are here with their son Lee. Please, I would like these 3 wonderful people to stand and be acknowledged by our crowd. And in addition, here at the Library of Congress, we love to add more resources from our wonderful programs. Today, another sponsor is the library's Veteran History Project, which collects, preserves, and makes accessible the war stories of America's veterans. This project accepts veterans' recorded oral histories, as well as the collections of original photographs, letters, military documents, diaries, maps, and other written materials. Any student over 15 can participate, or by asking an adult or an older sibling or friend to join you in interviewing a veteran. You might know a veteran from your own family, neighborhood, or even at a school whom you can invite to participate with you in this important project. You can visit the Library of Congress website for more information. But let me tell you about today's audience. We don't have time for our usual school-by-school cheerleading, so please hold your applause until I go through the list. Representing the military is Joint Base Fort Myer Henderson Hall in Virginia and Joint Base Andrews Naval Air Facility in Maryland. Both have brought military families, homeschooled students, and Girl Scouts. Schools represented from the District of Columbia, Washington School for Girls, Stewart Hobson Middle School, and Richard Wright Charter Public School. From Virginia is Osborne Park High School. We also have representatives from the Stonewall Jackson High School, Prince William County Public Schools, and Arlington County Public Schools. Let's have a round of applause for all of our students, their teachers, and we also thank their chaperones and parents. It is now my pleasure to introduce David Mao, who is the Acting Librarian of Congress. For you kids, that means he's a big shot, okay? David oversees the entire library and its various service units to ensure the library's services to Congress and to the entire American people are provided effectively. He previously served as Deputy Librarian of Congress and as the 23rd Law Librarian of Congress. Please welcome David Mao. David?
Thank you very much, John, and good morning to all of you. Welcome to the Library of Congress on this 72nd anniversary of D-Day. Today's program was inspired by Michael Grant's recent book, Front Lines, and it gives us an opportunity to talk about imagined roles of women in the military during World War II, and also gives us an opportunity to compare the events of World War II with 21st century military life. Now, Front Lines, the book, is the first in a planned trilogy of books. Mr. Grant is also the author of the Gone series and the Magnificent 12 series, and he spent much of his life on the move. He was raised in a military family, and as I understand it, spent his years in 13 different schools in 5 different states and Europe, so quite a lot of moving around. His Front Lines book imagines a World War II with enlisted service members of both genders, and it specifically chronicles 3 young women of diverse backgrounds who are placed in combat alongside of their male counterparts. So Michael, thank you very much for joining us today to discuss your book. I want to introduce the other guests, but before I do that, I want you to ask you to read a short passage from Front Lines so that we can set the stage for today's discussion.
Oh, should we do that now?
Yep.
Cool.
Oh, you can
Can I sit there? Oh, excellent. So much better. So much easier. I'll just stretch out here. I've chosen a passage that's only, I think, about 78 pages long, so it shouldn't be a problem. Where we are right now is that one of our main characters, Rio, has been dragged along on a mission that's not going to go very well, but it involves a landing on a beach, and this is her first time in any kind of serious trouble. And they're jumping off the boat right then. Rio lurches to her right, 3 steps, 4, 5, 10, 15, counting them off, drops to her knees, plants the butt of her rifle, and lies face down on her belly with her weapon pointing toward where she thinks the machine gunner might be. 1,500 rounds per minute. The standard German machine gun fires 1,500 rounds per minute. The machine gun opens up again, loud but distant, followed by softer but way too near sounds as the bullets hit sand. Soft whimpering noises are coming from her throat, unlike any sound she's ever made before. A split second slower than Rio to hit the ground, Kerwin cries out. He says, "Oh," just that, "oh." Rio sees him fall backward. His head lands on the edge of the retreating foam, legs folded beneath him. "Castle, you hit?" No answer. "God, no, God, no, God, no." The Jeep roars and splashes out of the landing craft and instantly draws the fire of the enemy machine gun. "Are you hit? Castle, are you hit?" "Doc, Doc," someone yells. The Jeep swerves left and goes nose down in a hole, rear wheels spinning and throwing up a plume of sand. "Ricklin, give Doc a hand with Castle," Sergeant Cole yells. "Stick, get that BAR over under that dune there, put some fire on that machine gun, take gear with you. Castaigne, Pank, Suarez, stay low and follow me." Rio crawls toward her stricken comrade, elbows digging, knees pushing, heart gone mad. The doc, who came ashore with 4th Squad, is hunched over Castle. He grabs at something in his medical kit, and now Rio sees that Castle is flailing spasmodically, arms and legs jerking, torso heaving. An advancing wave covers his face in foam. Pull him back, pull him back, pull him back. God damn it, he'll drown," the medic shouts. Rio grabs Castle's legs and has to rise to her own knees in order to get leverage. She is acutely aware of her exposed back, but hauls him out of the surf. "Hold him down," the medic says through gritted teeth as he tears open a bandage. "Got to stop the bleeding, his neck." "Take it easy, Castle, take it easy," Rio says. Blood pulses from Castle's throat. Like a garden hose that someone is kinking and releasing, kinking and releasing. The blood looks like chocolate syrup in the darkness. Kerwin is making guttural sounds, words full of urgency with no vowels. Rio rises again, just high enough to place her hands on Kerwin's chest and hold him down. But as she does this, she feels slippery warmth and realizes that large quantities of blood are gushing from his upper chest. He's been hit twice, not once. "Gotta take it easy, Castle. Let Doc work." "Would sound better if my teeth weren't chattering." But Kerwin isn't hearing her. He jerks wildly, tries to say something that comes out as a plaintive grunt, then lays back down, quieting. Doc slaps a pressure bandage on, but the artery in Castle's neck is barely slowed. It's like trying to block a fire hydrant with your fingers. Doc rips Castle's uniform shirt open, and there's a second hole, too near to his heart. The medic curses and then covers for that by telling Castle, it's okay, soldier. You'll be okay. Going home is all, going home." It's a lie, but Kerwin never hears it anyway. Rio feels his heart stop. 1 second there's a wild beating thing in his chest, and then nothing. Kerwin's last breath is a slow, wet wheeze of exhalation, as if he's sinking back into an easy chair after a long day. The machine gun chatters and digs divots in the sand near Rio, so she has to roll away, clutching her rifle to her chest with blood-slicked hands. Kerwin is dead without ever getting a chance to speak. His final intelligible word was just that single syllable, "Oh." So that was cheerful.
Well, thank you for that very descriptive reading. Thank you so much. We're also very privileged today to have joining us for today's discussion Lieutenant Commander Kristen Hansen and Captain Rebecca Murga. Lieutenant Commander Hansen is a graduate of the United States Naval Academy. She made her first deployment to Iraq and Afghanistan in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom, and then joined Operation Enduring Freedom. After graduating from Navy Fighter Weapons School, yes, that's Top Gun, she became a strike fighter tactics instructor. Commander Hansen, to her credit, has 66 combat sorties over Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria, and 472 carrier landings. As a public affairs officer, Captain Murga has captured the soldier's story in combat. She was attached to a Special Operations Command supporting SEAL teams and special forces in Afghanistan. She received the Bronze Star for her service and the Meritorious Service Medal for service in Iraq. Currently, she's captain in the Office of the Chief Army Reserve. Thank you both very much for your service to our country and for your sacrifices. Our very special guest today is Dr. Jill Biden. She knows sacrifice as well, and Dr. Biden, we are very proud to join you in being, that you are joining us, and you are a Blue Star mom, so thank you for being here. Military families founded Blue Star families to support one another and to enlist the community in supporting military families. As Second Lady, Dr. Biden works to bring attention to the sacrifices made by military families as part of her Joining Forces initiative with Michelle Obama. Dr. Biden also works tirelessly to highlight the importance of community colleges in America's future. She's a lifelong educator and continues to teach at a community college in Northern Virginia. Among her many accomplishments, Dr. Biden co-founded the Book Buddies program, which enlists trained volunteers to provide instruction to young students who need extra support in literacy, something that's very near and dear to our heart here at the Library of Congress. Dr. Biden is also the author of Don't Forget, God Bless Our Troops. Today's program will offer insights into the unique relationship between literature and history, and we're very honored to have her facilitate this conversation. At the end of the program, we'll have time for questions and answers, and it'll be followed by a book signing with both Dr. Biden and Mr. Grant. So enjoy the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So again, my name is Jill Biden. I am a military mom. Our son, Bo, was deployed to Iraq for a year in 2008. And one of the things that I've spent the last 8 years doing is traveling the United States and really around the world and meeting with military families. And so we've gone to bases in Germany and in Japan and all over the United States. And one of the focuses that we've had is to talk really to women in the military and to see what their lives are like, and whether they're a spouse or whether they're a fighter pilot or on the front lines. That's been our focus, to see how we can help military families. So Michelle and I have spent really the last 8 years of this administration working on that subject. So how many people in the audience are a military family? Who's connected to the military? Wow, a lot of you. Great, so this is perfect. So today we have two really, special women here Because if you think about it, how many people have, how many children, I guess kids actually, have their moms deployed? No, it's hard to see because the lights are in our eyes. So nobody really has a mom deployed. Well, some of the moms that I've met have told me, really, if you think about all of you, think about your mom being deployed and what you would kind of miss, right? Because the moms tell me, the moms who are in the military service, they tell me how hard it is for them to be away on those special occasions, like when their son or daughter is going to college, or they miss their graduation, their high school graduation, or being there for special birthdays, or all kinds of special events. So if you think about that event and not having your mom there, and having your mom in Iraq or Afghanistan, it's kind of hard. So you can see it from both points of view. You can see how the moms are missing their children, and their children are missing their mothers. So this is truly a sacrifice that I think female military leaders make when they join the service. Has anyone here in the audience, has anyone thought about joining the military? Any of, okay, a couple. All right, so as you've met Kristen, and you've met Jessica, and
Rebecca, right?
Rebecca.
I'll be Jessica for you, though. Ma'am.
Okay. Sorry. So I'd like for them to tell you their stories and why they went into the military and what kind of jobs they do, and you'll see really how special they are. So Kristin, you want to start with yours?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Kristen. I grew up in Weymouth, Massachusetts, which is about 30 minutes south of Boston. And for as long as I can remember, I grew up wanting to be an astronaut. Like, I was upset when I went to kindergarten because I could not watch shuttle launches. So my poor parents thought I would grow out of it, and I never did, to their dismay. But when I grew up, I was like, well, I have to join the Air Force. That's what astronauts did. And come to find out, the Naval Academy has the most astronaut graduates in the country. So I was very binary, and I was like, well, I'm going there. And Dad drove me down to Annapolis, and I was totally smitten. I loved everything about it, and my mom was totally dismayed when I came back and realized I wasn't going to change my mind. So went to Navy, had an awesome time there, played soccer, studied aerospace engineering. When I graduated, I was lucky enough to select aviation. Went to flight school down in Pensacola and Meridian, and was lucky enough to get F-18s out of flight school. So I got sent over to Lemoore, California, which is about 45 minutes south of Fresno, and I have somehow managed to live there for just over a decade now, which is probably a world record in the military, not having to move. So I've done 3 operational tours over there and an instructor tour, and had a fabulous time. As I said, I've done a couple of trips over to the Gulf and to Afghanistan. We actually just got home a year ago with my current squadron. So it's been a fabulous experience for me. The people have been outstanding, and I get a somewhat expensive aircraft to fly around on the government's dime. So thanks to all the taxpayers. I really appreciate it. So.
That's pretty impressive, really, to think of all the things that you've done and the career path that you've chosen. And so will you go back, and will you be deployed again?
Probably. I think I probably have about 1 more operational tour. So I'll go to an instructor tour for about 2.5 years in November, and then rotate out of there and go back to sea for about a 30-month tour. And then I'll be right about the time I have to decide if I want to get out again or stay in. So we'll see. I have at least 7 more years before I have to grow up, I guess.
All right, Rebecca, you want to tell us your story?
Sure. I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois. Anybody from Chicago in here? Probably not.
No, wait a minute, one person.
It's
Hard to see.
So when I was a kid, I actually wanted to be a filmmaker. I remember I went in to watch a film called Annie, and I left and told my mom, I want to be Annie. And she's like, well, you have parents. You cannot be an orphan. And so And so I realized that I wanted to make films. And so I went to school and studied television production, and I was a senior in college going that route when 9/11 happened. And for me, I really wanted to serve and give back. So I joined the Army, which is the best branch, in case you don't know.
How many years have we won in football?
I know. Not a good football team, but a fun branch. So when I was in at the time, my civilian job, I was working in sports production. So I was working for like ESPN and Comcast, doing some really cool, fun things with like the Yankees. And when I deployed, the Army found out, and they're like, well, you're going to tell soldier stories now. Mm-hmm. So it was an incredible experience because I spent about 3 years between Iraq, Afghanistan, and Kuwait, traveling around and interviewing soldiers and videotaping them and basically telling the American public what these men and women did. And in 2011, at that time, I was one of the first women to get attached to Navy SEALs and Special Forces. And Navy SEALs, Navy, in case you don't know, are some of the most awesome folks out there, and Special Forces as well. And women at the time of Afghanistan, nobody had talked to them. Nobody knew what they were doing or how they were working. So what they did was they took a bunch of women in the military, they put them with the Navy SEALs, and basically our job was to go out and talk to these women and talk to children and find out what they were doing. Because as most people know, the status that women have in a country is directly correlated on how well that country does economically, how well it does socially. So that was a big part of what I did. And while I was over there, I remember I was in the middle of Afghanistan, and a buddy of mine said to me, you know, if you could do one thing the rest of your life, what would that be? And I said, I want to make films. Mm-hmm. And that's what I did. He's like, you know, if you survive two years and in the middle of a war zone, how hard can being a filmmaker be? And he had obviously never been to Hollywood. So I went to Los Angeles and spent the last 3 years making films. And I'm finishing up a short film that is going to be on HBO probably next fall, which is really cool. And it's basically telling stories about, that film is about a wounded warrior who comes back. And so I realized like my calling now is really telling some of those stories.
And what's the title?
It's called One Halloween, which is a very short film, about 15 minutes, but we had 25 veterans come in and work on the set, and a couple of vets here actually supporting me that were on that set. I got to give a shout out to them.
Hi. Welcome.
And it's great because, as you know, like when you serve and you're in the military, you're part of a family, and when you leave, you know, sometimes it's hard because that family's not there anymore. Uh-huh. But you do have organizations like Veterans in Film and Television that, you know, you support one another and you tell those stories. And I realize that that's what I want to do. So my experience being deployed has really prepped me for the challenges of Hollywood, I guess.
I bet it has.
Yeah.
Well, you've really led an interesting life as well.
Well, it's, I think, you know, someone once said something, it's not, at the end of your life, it's not the person with the most money that wins, it's the person that has the best stories. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, spend your life trying to make like really good stories in your life.
Well, I think that's important that the kids in the audience, all the students in the audience, hear your stories, because I don't know what perceptions they have of women in the military, which is kind of interesting, Michael, for you, that one of the things I wanted to know, how did you choose this topic?
Well, I never believe in single motivation for everything, so there's always multiple motives, and part of it was marketing. Part of it was I like history, and I'm frustrated with the way history is taught, and I care about it. I care about it as only a high school dropout who came late to it can. You know,
so you dropped out of high school?
Oh, yeah. It's remember their inspirational stories?
Did you get your GED?
Yeah, I did get a GED, yes, because I'm very good at taking tests. Then I went to college, and I dropped out of college.
Wait a minute, I teach college. Stay in college, stay in school.
I tell everybody, one of my stablemates where I work, the publisher I work for is Veronica Roth, who did Divergent. And Veronica came right out of college at like age 22 or whatever and wrote a bestseller. Do it her way and not mine. If you're looking for a role model, go for Ms. Roth, not me. So that was part of it. Mostly, to me, the threshold is always, am I going to have fun doing this? Which sounds, I know, I'm supposed to have some grand motive, some big, long explanation, but honestly, it's, I thought it was interesting in terms of marketing. We were trying to see whether this kind of thing, whether you could do alt history in young adult, whether that was going to be a thing. So I told my editor, I'm putting a bet down on this. Let's see if this works. We'll see how that goes. But mostly, I was interested in history, and I'd started reading the Liberation trilogy by Rick Atkinson, because my father-in-law had forced it on me, and I thought, man, I don't want another book about World War II. And I started reading it, and about halfway through, I'm just like, this is like so much story, you know? I mean, almost like story as a commodity, like it's thousands of pounds worth of story. And so I wanted to kind of get into it, and I thought, I can do that. I can make it more interesting, more accessible, maybe. I'll add a couple changes. I've made 2 big changes in Frontlines. One is by inventing a 1940 Supreme Court decision, which
Do you want to tell them what that was?
Yeah, in my fictional world, in 1940, the Supreme Court decision comes down that opens the draft and enlistment to women. So it's a big shock to society, but then this all happens before Pearl Harbor, and then at Pearl Harbor, and at the point where the book starts, society and individuals are really confused about what this is going to mean, whether it's really going to happen. The girls who enlist don't actually expect to end up in combat. They think they're going to probably end up as secretaries or driving trucks, maybe. So they're a little shocked that they end up on the front lines, which I expect a lot of male
nurses,
soldiers.
Probably stereotypes.
Yeah, the stereotypical jobs. So I thought that was interesting, and I thought it would be fun to write, and also give me lots of excuses to do travel that I could write off on my taxes. Always a
So irreverent, isn't he?
always a consideration. I'm going to Europe this summer to research.
So,
And I just want to jump in and say, when they first asked me to do this panel, I thought it was me and some kid book writers. There's one kid book writer here, but she's also Dr. Jill. And then weeks later they go, Jill Biden will be there. And I go, what? Back up. But I thought, no, that's fine. I'm used to academics. And then they tell me that 2 actual combat officers are going to be there. And I was right on the edge of going, I can't do this because I make stuff up. They do things. Big gap between make stuff up in the comfort of my home and actually going out and being in trouble in dangerous areas. So if you have questions, I guess we're going to do Q&A later on. I should probably get all questions that involve multi-book series and how to write them. And all questions having to do with actual stuff involving combat should.
So you 2 have read the book. So how true do you think that Michael made the characters to your experience?
She has not read the book.
Yeah, so she's like top of her class, and I'm like the kid in the back that forgot to read the book.
She's waiting for the Cliff's Notes to come out.
Yeah. I was like, tell me a little bit about the book.
You should have gotten a synopsis. You know you can go on Google and do that, which is, I read them because then I know what my students have read, whether they've read the book or the synopsis.
I am terrible in history, so I will not judge any historical.
That's probably good.
I have no, but we were talking a little bit before, and I thought the characters were very well captured, and especially on the way that from the day one they start off in training until, hey, we've now been through some stuff and now we're a family. The transition through that, I think, is very well done. And I was laughing at, there's a point that I think it's Rainey that is getting on the train ready to leave, and they're looking at the train station, and she notices it's weird because the guys are saying goodbye to the girls as they're going off to war. And I chuckled because last Christmas, my roommate and one or two of the other girls on the ship with me, and there are far more girls now than there were when I started off. Like this last cruise, we actually had quite a bit, and I'd go in the bathroom like, I have to wait to take a shower. This is new. I've never had this problem before.
It's a good thing.
It's nice that way easier to have a girls' night out now. So. But the boys had actually come out to visit the girls at Christmas, and when they had come back, they said it was a really weird dynamic because the boys literally said goodbye to the girls and got in a taxi and went back to the airport, and the girls went back off to war. And that it was almost a mirror image of the two scenes. So I think things like that were captured very well, and a lot of the little bit of razzing that goes back and forth, and the transition between I don't really care like where you come from or who you are, as long as you do your job well, and we did it together, that matters more in the end than your roots or if you're a girl or a guy or what race you are. So I thought that was pretty cool.
Well, thanks.
I think it's interesting too, like when I interviewed one of the first women Rangers to graduate from Ranger School, so I don't know if you guys know the combat exclusion rule for women in combat, even though women have been there World War II, like I've interviewed women veterans who, I remember going to VA, there's a little old woman there, and she's like, yeah, I served. And you don't hear a lot of those stories.
No, that's
but I interviewed one of the first women to graduate from Ranger School, and she said the same thing. When you're dirty and tired and hungry and you need someone to carry like a little bit more weight, you do not care what that person looks like, what their nationality is, where they're from, or what their gender is. Like you just want someone that's going to be there for you and kind of have your back, which is interesting. When you're exhausted, you just don't care what that person looks like that's next to you.
Well, the military really is a family, and that's the feeling I get wherever we go. I think it is just such a special family.
And it can be very dysfunctional at times too. Like you have brothers in your family who, I always say if you're a woman, you have to just learn to deal with. You're gonna listen to every sports fact that there possibly is on the planet. You're gonna hear guys arguing about cars and this and that. And it really is being surrounded by an incredible group of men and women, but brothers that I'm sure you guys have brothers that you love and brothers that drive you insane. So that to me has always been what the military is. It's a wonderful family, but family can drive you insane too.
Sure.
For the record, we used to say that the guys in my squadron talked more about hair and from fashion than the girls did.
Yes.
We had more discussions on who could come up. Like Fury had just come out, and they all wanted like the Brad Pitt haircut, and they would go spend an hour at Zara when we pulled into port. And like me and my friend were just like, "What are you doing?" We're like, "That should be us." And
Of course, it should be pointed out in World War II, things were substantially different in that the Army was segregated, openly racist. I mean, I've masked the N-word throughout the book, not because I didn't want to, because I don't like masking anything, but it would have been an imposition on librarians who have a very hard time stocking the book as a result. But racism at that time, it wasn't under the radar. It was right out there and open. People would tell you to your face. People would say any number of things: anti-Semitism, racism. And those play parts throughout my book. And also the sexism would have been obvious, but I felt it would have a different character to it because I think people acquire a kind of a vocabulary of hate. They learn how to hate. They learn how to express thoughts that are racist or sexist, misogynist. But in 1942, that wouldn't have happened yet because women were not yet liberated. Men were not yet feeling threatened by women in the workplace. That came after World War II, after they realized, that riveting job I used to have, turns out my wife does it just as well as I do. So yeah, at that point, the Army was very much that way. Black units were not allowed in combat until the very end.
Yeah. Did you realize that? Did most of you realize that?
Yeah, so one of the two changes I made in the book, in addition to inserting women into it, I moved the combat involvement of African American units earlier than they were, in fact, because for fictional reasons I needed it to be that way, because I had a character I needed to get in play. Other than that, I tried to stay very accurate. And I've had people say, gotten reviews of it saying, well, you were unsparing in your treatment of racism and misogyny. And I wrote back to one person and said, no, actually, I probably dialed it back by a good 25, 30%. It would have been worse, I think.
Yeah, so for those of you who have not read the book, there are 3 female characters. So Rio is sort of the, I don't know, sort of the sassy one, would you say?
She's the all-American girl, basically. She's actually based in my head on Audie Murphy, who was a guy. And I use Audie Murphy advisedly for a specific reason. Audie Murphy, and if you don't know, Audie Murphy was a soldier in World War II who tried to enlist. He was a kid from Texas. His parents, I think, were dead. He was living with his sister, and went and tried to enlist in the Marines because he thought they were the biggest, baddest. Are they the biggest?
No.
This guy right down here, he's got a whole different opinion on it.
Oh, I mean,
Just saying. He tried to enlist in the Marines, and they told him, go away because you're too small and you look kind of effeminate. You look kind of like a girl. Went to the Navy. They told him exactly the same thing. Finally got in the Army. The Army trained him, sent him to Italy. He was deployed, and even after he was deployed, his officers didn't want to let him get to the front line because he was a tiny little guy and looked kind of effeminate from their point of view. He was, in fact, 5 foot 5 inches tall and weighed 110 pounds, which is almost exactly the size of the average American woman today. And Audie Murphy, for those of you who don't know, was the most decorated soldier in the American forces in World War II. Won basically every medal you can get, including the big one. So
Okay, and then
that's who Rio is.
Rainey was another character, and she was a Jewish woman. And so she went in, you know, to fight against the Germans. She really had this strong passion that all she wanted to do was kill Nazis. And so
she's the only one of the 3 who really has what you would think of as a classic motivation. I want to go to war to kill people. Rio was very much swept along, and the reason I did that was because when I was doing research and listening to first-person narratives, you'd hear guys say it over and over again. You know, I didn't go to save the world. I didn't go for this. I just felt like I had to. I felt like I was swept up. I felt like it was time. My friends were going, and so there was that kind of feel. And so a lot of the guys who enlisted, and I assumed the same would be true of Rio. She enlisted because her friend was.
Well, and to avenge her sister's death.
And to avenge, yeah. And she had a personal motive because she'd had a sister die. Rainey, though, is much hipper. She's a big city girl. She comes from New York City. She's Jewish. She knows it's, you know, the Jewish families have already started to kind of get the feeling that, hey, we're not getting a lot of letters from the relatives in Poland. Wonder what that's about. So it was already beginning to settle into the Jewish community that this was something specifically heinous going on for Jews. Of course, they knew, obviously, about the Nuremberg laws by that point. And then Frangie Marr is just in it basically because her dad got hurt.
And she's African American.
Yeah, she's a black girl from...
terrible soldier.
She's a terrible soldier. But she wants
made her out to be a terrible soldier.
But she wants to be a medic, and she's from Tulsa. And I use Tulsa deliberately, and for people who don't know about Tulsa, I would urge you to learn some of the history of Tulsa, because it's not great, but it's an interesting sideline that gets woven in later on in the narrative. So yeah, I've got the, so the 3 main characters, and then a couple of others.
And Frangie went in because they needed the money. They were very
Yeah,
poor.
her dad was out of work. He'd been injured, and for practical reasons, you know, which is, again, another big motivation from people, especially in those days. You know, this is a poor country. We were just getting over the Depression. There was a lot of people, you know, for whom not much money was a lot of money. You know, $10 was the difference between you keep your house or you don't.
So
different
she
now.
knew
Now it's
she had to
$100.
go in to support her family.
Yeah.
She's helping to
Yeah,
support her
she's
family.
helping. She needs the
So
paycheck.
that's why she went in.
Yeah.
So, so then your next books will be the 3 stories of where the 3 women end up?
Yeah, I'm going to stick with them. So I've already written book 2. That's in the can. In other words, I've written, it's been edited, it's all. I'm done with it. And it goes from the invasion of Sicily up through Italy. And then book 3, which will be D-Day through the liberation of Buchenwald. And then probably some aftermath, depending on how bloated the damn thing is by that point. And what my editor's telling me in terms of length. She doesn't like books over 500 pages.
So when you started out, did you think there are some things I want to get off my chest, or some themes I want to reveal?
No,
or
I never do that.
No?
I never, and it's odd because my books I'm generally considered, you know, I spend a lot of time talking about philosophy, about ideas, about abstractions, but God knows in real life I'm a huge egomaniac, but in my books, I don't want to be present in the books. I don't want people to see me. I want them to just look at the characters. And if there are ideas that come up in it, I want to present them as fairly as I can. I've had people ask me again and again, are you Christian, are you atheist? Because they don't know. Because I've discussed religion repeatedly in my books, and I've tried to be fair to all sides of the topic. It's not my job, as I see it, to force my ideas on readers. My job is to tell a story, and if in the process of me telling a story that's entertaining, they reach a conclusion or think about something, that's great.
All right, well, stylistically, I'm an English teacher, so when you talk to the reader and you say gentle reader, that sort of threw me off a little bit. So where did that come from?
That's just, it's an old form that you'd see back in, like more in Victorian era.
You're right, exactly.
Seen. So I did that deliberately as kind of a throwback because it's meant to sound ironic. It's meant to sound a little bit, I don't know, a little sneering almost, not quite, but a little bit of it's a bit of that you don't know what's going on, I'm telling you. So there's a narrator who we don't know the identity of the narrator, who has just a couple of bits scattered.
Will you reveal that?
Oh yeah. At first I didn't know who it was, because I don't plan books. I make them up every day as I go along. Although in this case, Mr. Hitler and Mr. Churchill kind of wrote the script.
Yeah.
And now I'm following along. Spoiler alert, we still win.
Are there any comments that you would like to make to the audience? Any of our...
And we'll do questions. We're going to do questions, right? You guys have questions? If you don't, we're just going to sit here and stare at each other. Yeah, you. What inspired me? I got to tell you the truth. I never look at it as inspiration. I don't treat this, and part of the reason is I think writers get a little over themselves, get a little full of themselves sometimes, and start talking about inspiration and talking about opening a vein and bleeding on the page and all this stuff. He says, cleaning up his language at the last second. That's not my approach. My approach is, this is my job. I go do my job every day. So before I became a writer, I'd been a waiter for 10 years. As a matter of fact, Annapolis, Maryland, you ever go to Middleton's?
Yes.
Middleton Tavern?
Love
Used to wait tables at Middleton Tavern. I was a waiter for 10 years. I cleaned toilets with my wife for 2 years. We had a janitorial service. And so that's where I come from. And I look at this as, this is my job. I work hard at it. I get up every day and I do it. I don't tolerate this talk of writer's block or any of this nonsense. It's my job to get up and do it. And by the way, when I say job, it's the best job in the world.
Oh yes, tell us where you write.
I write.
Okay, listen.
Well, at present, I'm writing mostly on my deck, which is on the side of a hill looking out over San Francisco Bay. So I sit there and look at, there's the city, and there's this much of the Golden Gate over here I can see sticking up above Belvedere Island. And then there's Alcatraz and all this kind of stuff. So I go out there and I work for about 3 hours a day, drinking coffee and smoking cigars. Don't smoke cigars.
Yeah.
You can drink coffee. Don't. You'll look ridiculous with a cigar. Seriously. So it's like the best job in the world. And as I sometimes point out to audiences, I generally earn more than the President of the United States, and nobody calls me up at 3 o'clock in the morning to tell me something blew up somewhere,
So writing is a great profession.
It's a great, man. If you can make a living at it, it's the best thing in the world. It's ridiculous. If people knew how easy it is and how great it is, we'd have people. We don't want to tell them. What they do is like way harder. They have to like fly airplanes.
Okay, I want to know, what's the theme of your story?
The theme?
Yeah.
I don't know. Did a teacher put you up to that? Where are you? Wait, right there? Yeah.
What's wrong with theme? You know I'm a teacher, right?
I don't know. Look, I look at these things, for me, I follow certain very simple rules when I'm writing. The first is, it's always character. Everything else is subordinate to character. So are you thinking about being a writer? No, okay, you don't want to do that. For people who are thinking about it, the job number one is make your characters real, make them authentic, and that's how I start. I start with character, then I go to setting, and from then on I just make stuff up. But I never really sit down and think, oh, what's the theme of this? You know, it's not like.
But when you read, you should think, what is the theme of this?
There's somebody. Oh, right here, dude. Yeah. How long does it take me to write a book? This one took me about 6 months. Usually it takes me about 6 months.
It's pretty thick.
I write 2 books a year, usually. Oh, okay, sorry.
How long did it take you to write your book?
1 month.
Revised answer.
It's still 6 months. Yeah, dude, the other dude right there, yeah.
Out of all the books that you have written, which one's your favorite?
My favorite is always the last one I've written, that I've written successfully. So I'm very fond of the Gone series because that basically pays the bills. But I'm happy with this one. I'm glad I pulled it off. I'm glad I didn't screw it up because that's, you know, I've written 150 books. And I got to tell you, you would think by now that when I sit down to write a book, I'd be like all Mr. Confidence. I know what I'm doing. And that's so not the case. I start, and every single time I sit there and go, I'm a few pages in, I go, everybody's going to realize what a fake I am. Everybody's going to realize I don't have any talent. I don't know what I'm doing. This obviously makes no sense. No part of this is good. And then at some point in there, I'll flip to the other side and go, my God, I'm a genius. Look at this. This is amazing. And then I finally send it off to my editor, and as soon as I hit send on the email, I'm like, oh, God, it's a piece of crap. It's terrible. It's the same cycle each time, dude, you know. That's the way it is. Okay, we got to go to the... Yeah.
Miss Christine, why do you think that you stuck to astronaut since you were little?
Can you say that again? Sorry.
Oh, why do you think you stuck to being an astronaut since you were little?
I got lucky in that, like, I happened to know what I wanted to do, and along the way, I didn't find anything that I wanted to do more, I guess. So I know a lot of friends who fly with me now who didn't start out wanting to fly. They just followed a path and they end up there. I will say that I'll never be an astronaut at this point, but it definitely got me to where I needed to be. And at this point, I really think that the military for me is kind of a calling, and I love everything about it, except maybe really bad nights in the weather trying to land on a moving ship, but that's a different story. But I think I was just reading a blog from a current astronaut, and he said, you know, I have a bunch of friends who set out to be an astronaut, and that's all they cared about the entire way. And they were so focused on that, they kind of forgot to enjoy the journey and forgot to do what they wanted to do along the way. So I definitely say that, you know, for all you guys, you know, as you go through school and college and start getting jobs, do what you want to do. Like, have a goal, but don't make that the only focus in your life. So for me right now, flying jets has been awesome. Haven't found anything I want to do more yet, so I'm going to stick with it for a little while until they fire me. So I think looking back on it, the journey has definitely been the best part of that, and wanting to be an astronaut got me to that point. So I'm thankful it's something that I did stick with, because it got me to where I am today. Does that answer your question? Cool.
It's a great message. Enjoy the journey.
What was your favorite part of writing the book?
My favorite part? Well, I actually kind of got so I like the research. So I've been really straining to try to make this as accurate as possible, even though I'm obviously not a historian or a high school graduate. Nevertheless, the research stuff is, I know.
Now you are.
Well, now I am, that's right, you're right. I got the research part was actually kind of fun, and in fun and strange sort of ways. Like, for example, I wanted to be super accurate, so when I was talking about the girls are learning how to fire, well, the girls and the guys are all learning how to fire the M1 and windage and elevation. So that part, I was able to find the original video online that the Army produced in 1942 And so I just lifted big sections of dialogue straight across, so because I was determined to be accurate. But also you get to do weird, cool stuff, like I drove around Sicily, you know, just looking at stuff, going, okay, if I was walking, if I wasn't in this car, how much harder would that be? What's the slope like? What can I see from here? What can I see from there? That's all kind of neat. I went down to Las Vegas, where they allow you to fire all the weapons. Well, not all the weapons, obviously the handguns and the infantry weapons, M1, 45, BAR. I got to fire all those just because I wanted to be accurate about how they feel, how they sound. You know, the little stuff like, is there a muzzle flash at the end of a Thompson submachine gun? Yes. That kind of stuff. So that was all fun. I enjoyed that.
If you live through the characters, then it's kind of interesting that you wrote about women because you're a man. So I mean, finding that voice, I mean, it has to be unusual to see a woman's perspective, I think.
No, and I'll tell you why, and I don't want to get too heavy or serious about this, but we have this assumption that we're dealing with people as a class of people, as a group. But if you're writing character, you're writing a specific individual. So it's like saying, you know, the body of women are X. Well, that says absolutely nothing about one individual woman. If the body of men are such and such, the body of, you know, the entire population of black people, the entire population of Latinos, you can't extrapolate from that and conclude anything about a single individual. You can, however, so you write about the individual, but I've also got a lot of practice. My wife is an author, Catherine Applegate, the one and only Ivan. We wrote a lot of books together, and as I've worked with her on many, many, many books, like literally 100, and I've to this day still written more books as a woman than I have as a man.
Have you really?
In fact, I'm the guy who, when Jessica and Elizabeth Wakefield and Sweet Valley Twins got their first period.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Probably some of the kids don't know what that means.
Well,
You see how young they are, right?
Yes. Yes,
it's a
Michael.
form of punctuation.
Yes, perfect.
The British say full stop.
Okay, I think we're going to take one question. I think, Sasha, you had somebody standing in line with you. One final question.
How many books have you written in total?
Well, we think it's about 150. It's hard to count them all because some of them we were ghostwriting for somebody else. Some of the ones we are created were ghostwritten for us. Sometimes we've had series that we started that were then perpetuated by other writers. But in terms of what we actually sat down and, you know, did this with, typed with, we think it's about 150, give or take.
Do you know what he means by ghost written?
Yeah, ghostwritten is when you do all the work, but the other person gets the credit. This is, by the way, this is a concept totally unknown in the military, I'm sure.
Yeah, we call it every day.
Yeah. No, you do, that's like, so there's an author of record, and then there who supposedly writes the books, but then they're actually written by somebody else. And we were the somebody else in many cases for a while, my wife and I. It's all very confusing.
I hate to interrupt this amazing conversation, but we have more things coming. So I first want to thank our participants on the stage, Kristen, Rebecca, Michael, and Dr. Biden. And David Mao and John Cole as well. Thank you very much.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.